I immigrated here because of your show, literally. So
Oh
there you go.
my, that's an incredible story. I have never ever heard that.
Hi, I'm Elaine Hyde from Chicago Star Media. I'm the editor and publisher, and today I am here with Jerry Springer, world famous talk show host and national treasure. Jerry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. This will be enjoyable.
I'm sure. And I've just been in awe of you for so long. You're busier than ever now with a show called Judge Jerry. Can you tell me more about it? It's just been picked up for season 3. What can we expect?
Well, it's a traditional court show. I'm the judge, and we take real cases. These are people that have filed small claims cases around the country, and if the case looks interesting, they get a call from one of our producers, and they call the plaintiff and the defendant and say, "Would you like to have your case adjudicated on national television with me as the judge?" And if they say yes, we fly them to Connecticut. We have the courtroom there, and that's the program. Now, I joke around a little bit because I can't help it, but it's in the end I have to be serious because these are real cases, and whatever I decide, that's it. They can't then go to a court of common pleas and seek to appeal it. So that's it, and I apply the law from whatever state they're from. So we tape every other week. The week that we don't tape, they send me the 35 cases and I have to research them. And so I really, at my age, to be able to have such a job, I really love it. And it's the only job I've ever had that I was actually trained for because, I graduated law school, actually in Chicago at Northwestern. I graduated there back in '68. So I finally get to put my law degree to use.
Is it refreshing? Does it bring you back, make you feel young again? Because it's, you have your law degree from Northwestern and now you're using it.
Yes. Whether it makes me feel young again, nothing makes me feel young again anymore. But it's a academic challenge.
Okay.
Which I enjoy. I mean, the crazy show I've had for all these years, it was fun to do, but, adults could have done what I did,
No.
And, I always say that to be a talk show host, you only need to know 3 lines. And that is, you did what? Come on out. We'll be right back.
All right, I'll start practicing.
Yeah, if you can do those 3 things, you're going to have a talk show in no time.
All right. Well, I signed up for tickets. I'm waiting for someone to call me back for Judge Jerry. Where can we watch it?
It's in every city in America. So you check your local listings. In Chicago, I
think it's judgejerry.com for more info, right? JudgeJerry.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And then wherever you're living, that's where you'll get the time for it. But it's daily, Monday through Friday.
Wonderful. So, the current world state, the pandemic's affected all of us. How did it affect your filming of Judge Jerry?
Well, in the second year of our filming, of our taping, it affected it totally because we couldn't have the plaintiff and the defendant in our courtroom because of, COVID protocols. So I was in Connecticut and my bailiff was with me. So I was in the courtroom, but the plaintiff and defendant, they were from the cities they lived in. So we did it remote. They were in Atlanta, they were in Phoenix, LA, wherever they were from. And, but when you watched it at home, you couldn't tell it was remote because the technology is so incredible that when the camera spanned around the room or scanned around the room, you thought they were standing right there because you'd see the courtroom in the background. So in other words, they weren't in boxes. So it was done remotely, but the viewer wouldn't know that just by watching. But this year, everyone's back in the courtroom again. So we'll continue to do it this way. So this way will be like we did it the first year. Only the second year was the remote.
Now, the bailiff, you mentioned the bailiff was in the room with you. Now, how does a virtual bailiff work? You know,
Well,
he provides a lot of comic relief in your show too. So how do you manage all that?
that's kind of easy. The difficult part is that the serious part of his job is to create order in case there is anything which gets out of order. And sometimes the plaintiff and defendant get pretty angry with each other. That's why the suit was filed.
Mhm.
That was difficult for him. So that was hard to create the order when they're 2,000 miles away. So that made it a little bit difficult. And at times it looked a little bit stilted. That probably was about the only time you knew that they weren't really in the courtroom with me. Otherwise, you couldn't tell.
Yeah, I've watched those. I've watched that season, a few episodes, and you really can't tell. I had to look real close and be like, "Oh, okay, it's virtual judgment."
Yeah,
It's as
yeah,
if you are in the courtroom with the litigant.
yeah. And I found it kind of restraining as well because I like to have the person there so there can be some chemistry. I can be joking around a little bit. But when you have a delay, it's pretty difficult to just get the spontaneity that you do get when you're in person.
So when people watch your show, I mean daily, if I'm going to follow it daily, what do you want people to take away from it? What's your mission with the show?
Well, the mission of virtually most television except news is entertainment.
Hmm.
So now the entertainment isn't necessarily just laughing. It isn't necessarily a circus. The entertainment could be just trying to figure out which way the decision's going to go. We love drama. We are social beings. You could have had talk shows and court cases thousands of years ago. People used to sit in the town square or in the marketplace, and they would chat about what's going on in their neighborhood. We're always interested in what other people are doing. And, and when there's a conflict, we're interested in looking how it's going to be resolved. That's true of soap operas. That's true of Shakespeare. That's true of crazy talk shows. It's human beings interacting. You can't miss when that's the formula.
I would have to agree with that. It certainly intrigued me. And so you mentioned you did your law degree here, and you also filmed in Chicago your show, the Jerry Springer Show, for quite a while.
Sure.
Now, tell me, when you were first in Chicago in 1991, when you were filming, and also for your law school, what was your thoughts about the city then, and have they changed? What do you think now?
Well, I loved Chicago right away, but I was raised in New York City. So I was used to a big city. So it wasn't as if when I came to Chicago, I said, wow, look at all the tall buildings. That I was used to. What I loved about Chicago was was the diversity that, you could go from one neighborhood to the next and find a totally different culture. And the obvious things. The city is beautiful. The arts, the entertainment, the sports. A beautiful city on the lake. To go along Lakeshore Drive and you look one way and you see this beautiful architecture, and you look the other way and there's this lake that looks like an ocean. That you don't get that hardly at all in our country. And so Chicago is really unique, and so it was easy to fall in love with it.
Well, I'm certainly in love with it. I've been here quite a few years, and
Yeah.
it's so nice to hear your comments that you love it and all your wonderful memories. Now, with your career, I was looking at your biography, and you've done so many things, but a theme that runs throughout is that you like to resolve conflicts. You've participated in a lot of instances where you help people come together to an agreement. And so I would call it, you're somewhat of a conflict resolver. And so I wanted to ask you, what tips do you have for leaders now, given the experience you have with so many walks of life? What tips do you have for the leaders now to help them better bring people together?
Well, I don't know that they need to take any advice from me, but I just would say there are two things. Think about what your mother taught you when you were in grade school. Uh, to be nice to people, to respect people, to be, not to hurt people. Uh, and for people that go into public office, remember why you're going in. You're going in to help people, not to serve a particular interest, but to help people. Nobody likes pain. And I think if every political decision that was made, uh, is this going to make people feel good? Is this a friendly thing to do, a nice thing to do? Then we would never be having legislation which makes it difficult for people to have nice housing, or would be difficult to get food, or it would be difficult to have good schools. If everyone really cared about giving good schools to everybody, then it's not that difficult to figure out. I mean, we know in some neighborhoods how to put together a good school. So why don't we do the same thing in the other neighborhood? And we have the resources to do it. And if those of us who are fortunate in life, such as myself, if we have to pay a little more, well, why not? Who wouldn't pay to live in this country? It's not that difficult. It's just a matter of caring. You know how to care about your own kids. Well, then care about other kids too. We know how to care about your grandparents. Then care about other grandparents. It's not magic. It's so much of what you go through, one article after another article. And whenever someone is in trouble, or whenever there's a dispute or something like that, some side is just not wanting to be nice. I know it sounds so corny, but it's true. It's true. We wouldn't say the things we say when someone, even the silly issues, like not silly issues like the names of sports teams. If one group is hurt by that use of that name, then how difficult is it for us to say, okay, I'll change the name. I won't call them Redskins anymore. It's so simple. It's not a question of how are we going to resolve this. We know darn well how to resolve it. If someone comes to your house, you're having guests for dinner or whatever, and they kind of let you know that, I'd rather be called this than that, we immediately call them that. We go to the name they asked to be called. Please call me Bob instead of Robert. So the next time I call his name, I'll say Bob. So if a community says, please don't call us Redskins, we find it offensive, I don't need to get in an argument. Well, why do you think it's offensive? Hey, if it's going to make the person feel bad, then don't do it. It's not even a great sacrifice. And that's what I don't understand. It isn't that difficult. And yet it's just a matter of what our intentions are. Go back to what your mother taught you.
Thank you, Jerry. And you know what? When I was watching your Judge Jerry show, it really came across to me how much you care about the people who are brought in front of you. It's a little serious at times, but your care and concern for them and the way you pass judgment really comes across, and that in itself is somewhat exceptional in this day and age, to see that care and concern come across from you, and just like somebody, and I would have to agree with that, Jerry. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. Now, moving on to a lighter topic,
Yes.
with your show, you've certainly experienced a lot just right in front of you, sometimes on the stage, with these people interacting in these ways and all these different stories, which sometimes are quite shocking. And because of all you've experienced, does anything shock you anymore?
And not, the honest answer is no. Well, because I don't think, if you think about it, I don't think you can be a grown-up in today's world and be shocked by anything anymore. You may be surprised that something happened to someone you know, but the actual event is not something that any grown-up would say, I never heard that existed. I never knew that kind of thing goes on. I mean, because it's been going on for thousands of years. There has never been anything on our show that isn't mentioned already in the Bible, in Shakespeare, in great literature. It's like we may be shocked to see it on television at first, not anymore with social media, but back when my show first started, we had never seen that before. Before the 90s, American television was upper middle class whites, whether it was Seinfeld, Friends, Frasier, all the shows were well scrubbed. Even the newscasters were all from upper middle class white neighborhoods. And when you first brought an African American in or an Asian in or whatever, when you brought them in, they would have to have an accent like Midwestern America. They couldn't talk the street talk or whatever. In other words, it was so now, and if you were of a minority, you never appeared on the regular networks. It was always a side network that they put you on, except if you were a doctor living in the suburbs, like Cosby. But other than that, so all of a sudden our show comes on, and for the first time on television, we're seeing people that aren't necessarily well-scrubbed upper middle income whites. And that was surprising. I mean, we still had sitcoms where mom and dad slept in separate beds. So that was shocking. Nowadays, our show would never be shocking because social media is 50 times, more revealing of people's lives than our television show ever was. So we're used to that now. But that's really what the show was. We were shocked by that. But I don't think anything that ever came on the show, I was surprised that, gee, I never knew that could happen.
Well, here's a question that you've probably been asked before, but here at Chicago Star Media, we are all about positive news, but we're also about getting the news scoops. So can you tell me something, Jerry, about yourself that you haven't told any other interviewer before?
Ooh, that's interesting. I just do so many interviews, it's hard to know what about me. I love country music and the opera. So maybe that's something people wouldn't put necessarily with me. I think most, you've looked at the material. That's a stumped question. I don't know anything that maybe that's the question. What have I never been asked? Okay, I'll tell you that. I've never been asked what I have never been asked before, which makes grammatical sense. No, I don't know that there's anything, people pretty much know my life. I mean, they know now my politics. Early on, that was true. Early on, people only saw me for the crazy show. And then over time, because of my political involvement and my liberalism, that kind of got to be known. So that I've been on a lot of the cable shows, news shows and stuff like that. So I don't know that that's,
So you've told us everything. We know everything. But here's what I want to know, too. I was really surprised that there's an opera about you, and you said you like opera. So yeah. There's an opera about you. Can you tell me about this opera? And apparently it's still running. Where can I see this opera?
I guess you'd have to Google it because I honestly don't know where it's still running. But it came out about almost 15 years ago, I guess. It's Jerry Springer the Opera, and it's a real opera. And the way I found out about it is I was in England at the time, and I was doing some television there. And there was some function, I think it was an awards dinner or something. And afterwards, there's like a cocktail party, and somebody came up to me, no one I knew, and said, hey, we're writing this opera about you. You okay with that? Well, what do you say? You don't say no. I said, I figured, yeah, right. I said, sure, go ahead, knock yourself out. And about a year later, I get invited to the opening. Oh, what happened? They wrote the opera, and it was I think it was the British Royal Opera Company. I mean, it really was good. In fact, it won the Olivier Awards, which are like American Tony Awards. So I had nothing to do with it. It was about me, but I had nothing to do with it. But they wrote this beautiful opera, and it won the Olivier Awards. They introduced it first at the Fringe Festival up in Scotland, and then it played in London, and it kept selling out, and then it played in America, and it goes from city to city. It was weird when I went to one of the performances in London. It's weird to see an opera about yourself, because first of all, everyone in the audience is looking at you throughout the whole opera to see what your reaction is going to be. So I was very self-conscious. It was difficult to see that. Without spoiling it, I can tell you that I get murdered at the end of the first act.
Oh.
Yeah. And then the second act, I go to hell.
Oh, gosh.
But I bring Jesus and the devil together, and we all rise with my final thought and go to heaven.
Exactly.
But it's the language is pretty rough.
Okay.
But the music is it's a pretty good opera, but I preferred We're About Somebody Else.
Well, I can't wait to find out more about it. I'm going to Google it when I get off here and maybe get a ticket. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Well,
You are an
thank you. You're a
inspiration,
pleasure to talk with.
and you've inspired me and so many people to be curious about America and American culture. And
Yeah.
it's such an honor and pleasure to speak with you.
Well, thank you, Elaine. Thank you very, very much. Nice talking with you.
All right. Well, that concludes the show.